So, hi everybody, I'm Jazz. I'm a solicitor in the VWV corporate team. Welcome to today's webinar. It's really lovely to welcome you all here, especially given that March was actually B Corp month and it was celebrated by over 2,000 registered B Corps. At least 40 of those are in the pharma and life sciences sector. So it's really growing in popularity at a fast pace. And now is a perfect time for you to all consider whether it's the right next step for your organization. So in this session, the main aim is to give you a bit of an overview of the B Corp movement. We will cover what a B Corp is, the certification process, the new standards, and any key considerations for B Corps. And like Paul said, there'll be plenty of time for questions throughout and during the session. Next slide, please, Ellie. There's a poll that we wanted to run just to kind of gauge the range in the level of knowledge in the virtual room. So hopefully we can all meet you at where you're at in the journey of becoming a B Corp and give you all some useful information. If you can answer what stage you're at in the B Corp process, that'd be really helpful for us. Okay, so it seems like there's a real range here from people who don't know very much or some that know a fair amount about B Corps. So that's good. Hopefully you'll all get something out of this session at least. So what is a B Corp? A B Corp is a for-profit company that's recognized and certified as meeting high standards of social and environmental performance, public transparency, and accountability. Importantly, a B Corp is not a type of legal entity in and of itself. So most B Corps will be registered companies or another form of entity. And instead, this additional level of certification is for an organization who adheres to specific values. There are clear priorities for those organizations who are certified as B Corps, including having an ethos of doing business to benefit all people, communities, and the planet. A B Corp has both a mission or purpose and a profit motive. So importantly, it seeks to balance profit and purpose. It's really all about a holistic approach to doing business rather than just a focus on monetary advantages. Although importantly, a B Corp is set up to make profit. In terms of who can become a B Corp, the starting point is that you can certify if you operate for profit in a competitive market and have at least 12 months of operation. Importantly, a non-profit organization or a charity isn't eligible to certify, as there is a need for the element of conducting business for profit. And we'll touch a bit more on the certification requirements a bit later on. Ellie, can you change the slide, please? Thank you very much. So the B Corp movement started in America in and around 2006. The B in B Corporation stands for beneficial. And so the movement started with organizations looking to change the way of doing business. So to do business in a more beneficial way to people and the planet, and to harness business as a force for good. B Lab is a non-profit network leading the movement, working to transform the global economy to benefit all people, community, and the planet, and mobilizes the B Corp community. So it's actually B Lab as an organization in each country as part of a global network that deals with the certification of new B Corps. There are B Corps across the globe, including Australia, East Africa, mainland Europe, and North and South America. Known as a B Global Network, this unified group of global, regional, and national organizations power the B Corp movement at a local level in each country. Today, this is an incredibly fast-growing movement. So there are now over 6,000 certified B Corps across the world in 159 industries, over 89 countries, and with over 530,000 workers. This is across societies and sectors, which shows a real shift in momentum for systems change. Ellie, next slide, please. So what's the purpose? The B Lab strategy is rooted in the global theory of change, which aims to redefine the role of business within our economic system so that every business is a force for good. The aim is to transform the economic system into a more inclusive, equitable, and regenerative global economy. And it's important that other organizations wanting to join the movement and become a B Corp hold these very same values. As a movement, B Corp identified certain issues with the way business is currently conducted. The aim is to redefine the way business is done so that all businesses start to play a role in positively impacting the global economy. The desire is to catalyze policy change and develop a network of communities for change across the world. B Corps themselves are the leaders in this shift, And certified B Corps are modeling both the behaviours through the B impact assessment and ongoing improvement, which we'll mention a bit later on, and the governance structures through the B Corp legal change to see this shift happen. It's important to pay attention to the real purpose behind the movement and understand it if you're considering becoming a B Corp. Unlike other certifications for business, B Lab is unique in its ability to measure a company's entire social and environmental impact. B Corp certification is a designation that a business is meeting high standards of verified performance, accountability, and transparency through its business. So it's a holistic approach that should be evidenced throughout an organization, in its culture, as well as in the way it does business. The motivation for the movement is clear in the common values rooted in the Declaration of Interdependence, which all B Corps have to sign in order to complete the certification process. The key is that B Corp certification is not exclusively focused on a single social or environmental issue. Once certified, a B Corp has a legal requirement to consider the impact of its decisions on workers, communities, customers, suppliers, and the environment. It's that desire to hold businesses to these wider, all-encompassing standards and do business better, whilst also recognizing that a business can continue to make profit whilst doing so. Ellie, next slide, please. So what about in the UK? The movement has really taken off with speed here in recent years, with over 34% of UK adults recognising the B Corp name and logo. B Lab UK is an established charity and was created in 2015 with the mission to inspire and enable people to use business as a force for good here in the UK, joining the global network. So it's this charity that deals with the certification process in the UK. The UK B Corp community is growing faster than ever and is now home to the second largest B Corp community in the world, with over 2,000 registered B Corps. In addition to B Lab UK, there are 12 local networks within the UK, depending on the region in which you operate in. And once certified as a B Corp, you can join the relevant B Local network and access that additional support from your community. Once certified, you can also gain access to the Beehive, which is an excellent resource and allows you to get support and advice from fellow B Corps. The movement is gaining momentum, which is an amazing achievement, especially during B Corp month, where it's great to see retailers and the wider community getting involved. You may well have noticed shops such as WH Smith and Ocado having end-of-aisle stands showing exclusively B Corp products to raise awareness for this. It shows a great recognition of what a B Corp is and the benefits of engaging with B Corps. Ellie, next slide, please. We also wanted to briefly mention the Better Business Act, which is linked heavily to the B Corp movement in the UK. The B Lab website states that 72% of the UK public think businesses should have a legal responsibility to the people and planet. The issue this campaign is seeking to address is the provisions within Section 172 of the Companies Act 2006 and its wider implications on how directors conduct their business. This section essentially requires directors to put profit before people and planet, putting future generations at risk. The proposed amendments would extend the considerations a director must make in exercising its purpose of benefiting the company members, but importantly, balancing that with benefits to the wider society and environment and reducing the potential harm it causes to society and the environment. The desire is for this campaign to lead to a cleaner, greener, fairer future, aligning businesses more generally with the standards of the B Corp movement, and allowing directors of businesses to think differently. There are 4 key aims of this. So first, to align interests by setting out a new fiduciary duty within Section 172, so that the interests of shareholders are balanced against those of the people and planet. Secondly, the change must empower directors to exercise their judgment in weighing up and advancing the interests of all stakeholders. Thirdly, the change must apply to all businesses by default, so it's no longer optional to benefit wider stakeholders. And fourth, following the change, businesses must report on how they balance people, planet, and profit in a strategic report. The Act received its parliamentary reception in April last year, and so we're currently waiting to see what happens next. If you're interested, you can visit the Better Business Act website and sign up to the coalition to support the movement. Next slide, please, Ellie. So I'm going to talk about a few examples of B Corps in action. So the first one here is Candy Kittens, and this is a sweets brand co-founded by star of Made in Chelsea, Jamie Lang. The brand was established in 2012 and have been on a journey towards B Corp status. They removed all animal gelatin and refused to use palm oil, becoming fully vegan as a brand since January 2022, and they achieved carbon neutral status in 2021. They have an overall B impact score of 86.5, and they are a great example of a business in the food industry that decided to do things differently, and as a result is incredibly successful and continues to grow. Their aim is to create a responsible business, leaving the planet in a better place than they found it. They were the first UK sugar confectionery brand to become B Corp certified, and on their website, they state their commitment to doing things better. They recognize that it makes them part of a pretty cool community, building an inclusive and sustainable economy that works for everyone, and that it's not just about getting a certificate and then sitting back and relaxing. It's the start of a new chapter to make impactful plans for the next year and beyond to continue doing business better. The brand was determined to put people and the planet first every step of the way, and recognize that B Corp is a seal of approval that they're meeting the highest possible standards of social and environmental performance, and their commitment to use this business as a force for good. The second example, if you could change the slide, please, Ellie, is TOMS, which is a footwear and lifestyle brand, which uses its business to improve lives. Their overall B impact score is 121.5. And since 2006, its community has impacted over 100 million lives through supporting the work of non-profit organizations around the world. They believe in a future where all people have a chance to strive and commit a third of its profits to grassroots goods in support of the people working to build a more equitable tomorrow. As a brand, it's clear to see why TOMS would become a B Corp, to strengthen its reach and recognition as a business doing good. TOMS has been a certified B Corp since November 2018, and over the years, the brand has been a source of inspiration for the B Corp movement, with its unique one-for-one business model, giving away one pair of shoes for every pair sold, supporting larger health, education, and community development programs through strategic partnerships. And TOMS was the original purpose-driven brand. They see certification as further strengthening and validating the brand, particularly as it broadens its giving portfolio through meaningful partnerships with passionate and progressive activists and artists. Next slide, please, Ellie.
Sorry, Jazz, got a question in just asking about the numbers. So the question is, how are the numbers 86.5 and 121.5 calculated?
So actually, we're going to touch on this a little bit later,
okay.
But essentially the B impact assessment, which is the assessment that scores B Corps, has a pass rate that has to be over 80 points. So the maximum score is around 200 because there are 200 questions that are tailored to that organization. And in order to achieve B Corp status, one of the requirements is to meet an 80-point score on that B impact.
Thanks,
so
Jess.
That's how those numbers play in. Sorry.
That's it. Automatic lights, human detection system. Okay, but back to you then. So we'll cover that in a bit. So
yeah.
If you take it from here.
Yeah, that's fine. In terms of scoring as well, these scores are all published online. So any brand that is a certified B Corp, you can look up their score.
Okay.
And not only can you look at the score, you can look at the score in each of the 5 areas that the assessment tracks. Okay. So we'll talk about that a bit later.
Thanks a lot, Jazz. And just a reminder, everyone, just to keep the questions coming in the Q&A box. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, thank you very much. So in terms of eligibility, you can certify as a B Corp if you operate for profit in a competitive market and have at least 12 months of operations. So sole traders are eligible to certify, but charities and non-profit organizations are not. There's no minimum or maximum size. So certain companies, such as those under 1 year old, and those with related entities or large multinational and public companies have additional considerations. But if your business is a startup with under 12 months of operations, then you're eligible to become a pending B Corp. And pending B Corp is a great way to communicate the mission of your company, engage with the B Corp community, and put in place a framework for impact improvement. Next slide, please, Ellie. So this slide here sets out the 4-stage process of becoming a B Corp. So the first is to pass the assessment. The B Impact Assessment, which I just briefly mentioned earlier, assesses the impact of an entire company. B Corps must achieve a verified score of at least 80 points, and then they recertify every 3 years. They then must make the legal change, so they have to amend their Articles of Association and commit to considering the impact of their decision-making on all stakeholders. They then commit to transparency, so B Corps commit to publishing their score publicly and producing annual reports on their progress. And finally, they have to pay a submission fee of £250 plus VAT and an annual certification fee to B Lab based on turnover. And we'll go through these fees a little later on in the webinar. Next slide, please, Ellie. So the B Impact Assessment assesses these 5 areas: governance, workers, community, environment, and customers. There are roughly 200 questions which are tailored to your company's size, sector, and location. And the impact assessment measures your positive impact on all of these 5 areas. 80 plus points are required to achieve B Corp status, but it's rare to achieve this on the first time. So most businesses will spend time improving their score. Once your score is over 80 points and you've completed the disclosure questionnaire, you're ready to submit your assessment for review by B Lab. During this process, your score could change, so it's always better to answer the questions conservatively and submit in excess of 80 points. Verification is when a standards analyst will request supporting evidence on your assessment, which is then discussed during a review call. The highest scoring B Corp in the UK is the 3-person team U Underwear, who scored 161 points in the B Impact Assessment. So that gives you a good idea of what scores are typically like. So you have the 80-point range, which is the pass rate, and the highest scoring in the UK is 161 out of 200. Next slide, please, Ellie. So this is an example of what you can find on the B Corp directory on the B Lab website. So this example is taken from Lloyds Direct, who essentially deliver prescriptions on behalf of Lloyds Pharmacy. So you can see that their overall B impact score is 85.4. And then in the circles, you can compare that to the pass rate of 80, but also the median score for most businesses, which you'll see is around 50. There are multiple tabs along the bottom of the score, which show you the scores in each of the areas. So you can click through on the website and see how each of these companies are listed and how they scored in their workers section, in their customer section, and see how that differs. Next slide, please, Ellie. So the next stage in the process is a legal requirement. In making the B Corp legal change, the business will be required to adopt specific wording into their Articles of Association to reflect a commitment to creating a material positive impact on society and the environment, and to consider the impact of decisions on all of its stakeholders, including shareholders, employees, suppliers, society, and the environment. Once amended, the company's articles will be filed with the Companies House and will serve to protect the company's mission whilst empowering directors to consider wider stakeholder issues and make mission-aligned decisions over time. This part of the process is something that BWV can help you with. Next slide, please, Ellie. So this timetable here, it essentially sums up the various stages in the process to becoming a B Corp and gives you an idea of how long each stage can take for a typical business. The first step in the process is the evaluation queue. So this is where a B Lab evaluation team analyst will review your B Impact Assessment. And there's usually nothing much to do other than wait. The second stage is evaluation, which is a pre-screening exercise that determines your company's eligibility for certification. The analyst will screen the application and request documentation with a focus on structure, track, eligibility, and scoring. Your company is then placed in a verification queue where you complete any documentation requests, wait for B Lab to assign an analyst for verification of the B Impact Assessment. The next stage is the verification, where B Lab reviews and verifies the business's responses and verifies its BIA score with documentation and a review call. If your score below 50 points, you'll have to move on to the improvement stage where you'll be asked to make improvements. Once you reach the 80-point score, post-verification, you'll have access to all the B Corp community and resources. Next slide, please, Ellie. So once your company has met all of the requirements, you then become a certified B Corp. You'll be able to sign the B Corp agreement and pay your fee. You can also begin to fly the B Corp flag and celebrate your certification with your employees, suppliers, and customers, as well as attend community events and working groups. To maintain that certification, you'll need to recertify every 3 years, achieving a verified score of at least 80 points on the impact assessment. You're required to publish an annual impact report to share your progress and goals. Once you submit your assessment, a one-off submission fee of £250 plus VAT is payable to B-Lab to ensure the company's commitment to the full verification process. For B Corp, certification is then, fees are then paid annually and are calculated based on the company's turnover on the last set of audited accounts. Ellie, next slide, please. So this shows the sliding scale of fees based on turnover, ranging from £1,000 to £50,000. Pending B Corps pay a one-time fee of £500 for the full 12-month period. And there are also discounts available on certification fees for underrepresented business owners for the first 3 years. Next slide, please, Eddie. So we're now going to touch on the current environment and what's on the horizon for B Corps, including some important proposed changes to the B Corp standards that underpin the B impact assessment. Next slide, please, Ellie. As discussed earlier, the B Corp community has grown significantly since the movement began in the US. The rapid growth has seen the introduction of companies of all sizes and across all sectors under the B Corp logo. The Financial Times recently explored some of the wider concerns about multinational or other companies with questionable ethical or environmental practices entering the movement. So taking a few examples from the image on this slide, firstly, Nespresso's certification as a B Corp was met with criticism due to concerns about its treatment of farmers and workers, and it being a wholly owned subsidiary of Nestle. And secondly, BrewDog had its B Corp certification revoked following allegations of bullying and a culture of fear amongst its employees. These names represent a minority of those certified B Corps, which are, by and large, fully committed to the B Corp movement. However, this scrutiny is certainly on B-Lab's agenda and its wider plans to strengthen the standards for becoming a B Corp moving forward. Next slide, please, Ellie. So looking at what's on the agenda, with the growth of the B Corp movement and global changes, B-Lab has recognized that it must continually evolve its standards. In December 2020, B-Lab announced a review for B Corp certification, and they're proposing a framework based on mandatory performance on key topics, which we'll cover shortly. The standards play a key role in defining social, environmental, and governance best practices in businesses and are at the heart of the B Corp certification process. Next slide, please, Ellie. So what's different? In the current B Corp certification process, companies have flexibility in how they achieve the 80-point score. While it's essential for companies to meet the legal requirement, there's no minimum score that companies need to meet in each of the 5 categories. The result is that a company could meet a very low score in one of the categories, such as workers, while still meeting the minimum 80-point score in the other categories combined. These new draft standards propose to change this approach by removing the 80-point minimum score and by instead identifying 10 specific topics that are non-negotiable and essential to a certified B Corp. The result is that B Corps will not be able to thrive in one area of impact whilst falling behind in another. Next slide, please, Ellie. This slide here shows the difference between the current performance requirements against the proposed requirements. So currently, companies have a verified point score of at least 80 and then have flexibility in how to achieve that 80-point score. Going forward, companies will need to meet specific requirements on 10 topics, and each one of those topics will be verified for certification. The 10 draft new topics for mandatory performance are purpose and stakeholder governance, worker engagement, fair wages, justice, equity, diversity and inclusion, human rights, climate action, circularity and environmental stewardship, collective action, impact management, and risk standards. Each of these standards has its own outcomes and specific requirements and measurements. Instead of running through all of these one by one, we've picked 3 standards from the list to explain the requirements underpinning each one. Next slide, please, Ellie. So for purpose and stakeholder governance, companies must have a defined purpose statement that contributes to a material positive impact on society and the environment and is incorporated into the organizational strategy. The company's highest level of governance has to have an explicit oversight role in monitoring implementation of this purpose. For impact management, it's a governance commitment to improvement, and there must be systems in place to maintain compliance with ongoing B Corp standards. For risk management, companies are required to share information with B Lab regarding controversial matters or stakeholder concerns. This ensures there's no public misrepresentation of the B Corp movement, and that there are mechanisms in place to respond to and remedy stakeholder grievances and concerns. It also ensures that lobbying policies do not compromise purpose or an equitable, inclusive, and regenerative economy. Next slide, please, Ellie. Alongside these 10 standards, there are also topics which B Corps must assess and set goals to improve on. There's no minimum performance expectation for these other topics, but they will form part of the impact assessment. This category can include questions on the governing body, workers, safety, and charitable giving. Next slide, please, Ellie. So what happens next? B Corp and public consultation period on the new standards has now concluded, and we're told by B Lab that no company will certify or recertify on the new standards before 2025. So there's still a little bit of time for us to get our heads around the new standards and what this will entail. Next slide, please. We've just got a quick poll here to assess whether anybody needs any support from us going forward with the B Corp certification journey. We won't share these, but it's just good for us to know so that we can follow up and ensure that we can help guide you through the process if you'd like us to.
Thanks, Jazz. Actually, sorry, Jazz, if you leave the poll up there, because there's a question that's coming that maybe might help people make their minds up.
Yeah,
that's
sure.
Okay. So the question that's come in is, what are the advantages of being a B Corp, and is it worth all the hassle? That was the question that came in.
It is a long process, and it does take time to ensure your score is up there. But what's good to know is that actually a lot of companies who aren't in the process of applying to become B Corp still use the B Impact assessment to assess what they're like as an organization, and sometimes end up doing better than they would think and think it's worthwhile to then apply to become a B Corp. In terms of the advantages of becoming a B Corp, it's mainly a marketing tool, so it can help ensure that you have the right talent and help your recruitment. So if you're ranked highly in terms of worker benefits and the way your culture is represented by your B Impact assessment, then it's a great way to retain and actually recruit new members of staff. It also gives you access to, like I said, the Beehive community. So access to other B Corp organizations in different sectors and within your own sector that you can draw on for expertise and advice. There are also networking opportunities, and overall, it's about whether your company is passionate about making a social and environmental impact and being able to easily demonstrate that to anybody within your community. So it really is a personal choice, but there are a number of benefits, and most of them around how your company and brand is portrayed in the public.
Thanks, Jazz. In fact, one of our life sciences clients a couple of years ago, they got their articles of association updated, and just earlier this year they were asking about amending them because they wanted to go for B Corp status. personally, I think it's quite exciting because it's an opportunity to really tell the world that you're a responsible business. And no one needs to know if you haven't got certified. You can just have another go at getting it done again. But there's all sorts of tools that people can use these days, I think, to try and win people over, whether that's staff or customers, other stakeholders.
Yeah,
To me, this
and
looks
sometimes
like a
it
really
goes
good one.
sometimes it goes even wider than that. So we've been approached by certain suppliers in the past who've asked the question of whether we're certified as B Corp,
Mhm.
because actually they want to ensure that everybody in their supply chain is meeting those same standards, because they're assessed on that. When B Lab reviews the company, it reviews the whole company when certifying. So it wants to see that you're working with responsible suppliers, that you're having a positive impact on the community, that you're treating your workers well and treating your customers well. So it really looks at everything. And if you want to ensure you're reaching your company's full potential and not being turned away by potential suppliers, customers, then it's something to look at.
And do you know what also actually, Jazz, just looking at the poll from earlier, as you saw that there was a whole range of people on this webinar who some people know quite a bit about B Corps and quite a lot who don't. I think this is still quite new and fresh. It started in the States, didn't it? And it's just the way it's
Yeah.
coming over here now. And I guess a lot of people don't yet know about it, but I think this is the thing to watch in compliance at the moment, B Corps. I
Yeah.
think it's a real opportunity for people to be seen as a leader if they get the B Corp status.
And this is the thing. Once you know about B Corps, you end up seeing it everywhere. So next time
Mhm.
you're in the supermarket, you'll look around at the products and look for the B Corp logo. And as soon as you see it, you'll know exactly what that company it took that company to get to that stage and becoming a B Corp. So it's quite interesting to see some of your favorite household brands and whether they're a B Corp or not.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. The poll's still open, but if I see most of you have voted, I can't see any other questions. I suggest we just give it another 30 seconds, Jazz, just to see if there are any more questions that come in.
Yeah.
So let's do that thing they do on the radio and fill this section as we're waiting for the see if any more questions come. Let's just give it
So
give it a
just
few
to
seconds.
just to inform some of the follow-up, if there is anything that you need help with, it's usually along the lines of enforcing the legal requirement to change articles, update any policies or employee handbooks
Mhm.
that might require updating as part of certifying as a B Corp. Or even if you just want advice generally on the new standards and what that would mean, what changes that would mean for your company, whether it's worth exploring becoming a B Corp before their standards come into force, or whether it's worth waiting. So
Thanks, Jazz. And I
we're
think
more
at
than
some
happy
point,
to.
I think you've written some articles, or there was a FAQs I think I saw as well.
Yeah.
So maybe that if for anyone who's interested, maybe we could give people more information. But I can't see any more questions. So Jazz, I'll just say thank you very much. I thought that was really interesting. I know I've heard your presentation before, but even just seeing how it's evolving, that there's another stage coming through now.
Yeah.
I think it's certainly one for the compliance armory, and to really stand out rather than having to comply, but actually show that you are a responsible business and being able to use it to positive effect. So thank you to Jazz. Thank you also to our colleagues, particularly Ellie in the VWV events team. Thanks everyone for joining. The next session will probably be in the autumn on a data protection update. It will be specifically on the new bill that is coming through, and we've got a further session planned for later in the year as well. If you've got any suggestions for what you'd like to hear from us, then please do let us know. We'll try and tailor the content according to what you, the audience would like to hear about. But other than that, Jazz, thank you very much.